Hello everybody. Welcome to my tutorial on how to use Nextcloud. What is Nextcloud and why should you care? Nextcloud is a free and open source cloud storage solution similar to that of Google Drive, OneDrive and other proprietary solutions. But the main twists are threefold. One, it is free and open source, which means that the code behind the program is completely free for anyone to look at, change and update if they see fit. This means that any security issues that may occur in the future can be quickly plugged, as members of the community will be able to see the code and make the necessary changes to prevent any data leakages. The second reason is that the company behind Nextcloud promises to not store or sell your data in any way, shape or form. This is not something you can guarantee with Google Drive, OneDrive or even iCloud Drive. The third reason is that it is available to upgrade as you see fit. If you want to start with 3 GB of storage, you can go with the Nextcloud provider. If you want 30 GB of storage, you can self-host at home. 300, 3 TB, it's completely up to you. Now that I've got your attention, we shall begin. In the last video, we discussed what Nextcloud was and why you should use it. Now, we're going to discuss your options for running it. The first option is using a Nextcloud provider. Similar to Google and OneDrive, a Nextcloud provider uses Nextcloud as a base and adds its own design and features on top of it. This takes away from the more tedious tasks that you may have to deal with when running the server yourself. Two options that I have found are OwnDrive and Cloud Ammo. OwnDrive offers a free plan which provides 2 GB of storage and access to the base Nextcloud app. Paid plans provide more storage, going up to 50 TB or 50,000 GB. Cloud Ammo is an alternative with a basic plan that costs $4 per month with 100 GB of storage. There are no free plans. Note that these providers must abide by Nextcloud's data privacy and data protection rules. However, if you only trust yourself with this data, then you can self-host. This is where you have a server on your home network that you can access from other devices. You can also access this data from anywhere you have an internet connection if you wish. A server can take the form of an old laptop or desktop that you leave plugged in with an external drive connected. If you prefer a device that uses less power to run, then use a Raspberry Pi. This is a small computer that uses an OS based on Linux and will cost about £40 depending on which version you get. A storage drive for data costs about £35 and the data for the operating system or OS can cost about £20, which adds up to about £100. I bought the Raspberry Pi 4 with 8GB of RAM, which is the top of the line model. This cost about £80. For data storage, I used a 1TB solid state drive, which costs about £80. And the case for the Pi was about £20. The total was about £200. This isn't necessary and can be changed/upgraded down the line. The benefit of self-hosting is that you choose how much storage you get instead of OwnDrive or Cloud Ammo where they pick for you. This tutorial will look at self-hosting. In the next video, we will look at what items you'll need to get started. See you then. In the last video, we looked at the different ways that you could host your data on Nextcloud. These can include self-hosting on a Raspberry Pi, self-hosting on an old Windows, Linux or Mac computer, or through a Nextcloud provider. In this tutorial series, we will look at self-hosting using a Raspberry Pi. For this, you will need a Raspberry Pi, the power supply for the Raspberry Pi, storage for the operating system, and storage for your data. The best place to get all of these is the python.com. This includes both a store and tutorials on how to work with your Raspberry Pi. There are two models of Raspberry Pi that we will look at, the Raspberry Pi 3B and the Raspberry Pi 4. The Raspberry Pi 3B is the best of the third generation of Raspberry Pis and was released back in February 2016. Its features include an Ethernet port for you to connect directly to your router, built-in Wi-Fi so that you can wirelessly connect to your internet, and an HDMI port so that you can connect directly to your TV or monitor. This is the cheapest option and uses less power, so it is perfectly suitable for self-hosting. There are two issues. It only has 1GB of memory, which means that you cannot run multiple programs at once. You would only be able to run Nextcloud and maybe one other program, such as a browser. The other issue is that, as it's an older model, it cannot provide as much power to faster storage drives. So, if you want to transfer your data more quickly, then I suggest getting the Raspberry Pi 4 instead. The Raspberry Pi 4 comes in 3 versions, 2GB, 4GB, and 8GB of RAM/memory. It provides more modern ports, and has the same benefits of the Raspberry Pi 3 in terms of built-in Wi-Fi and Ethernet, except it has more modern standards. It is, however, more expensive and uses more power, and therefore you will need a more expensive power supply. Please note that for the Raspberry Pi 4, you will need a micro HDMI to HDMI cable in order to connect to a TV or monitor. This will be provided with the starter kit, or can be purchased at the python.com. Speaking of power supplies, the Raspberry Pi 3B comes with a micro USB port. This is an old connector and thus is very easy and cheap to find power supplies to fit this connector. However, it does not provide much power for faster storage drives. Speaking of which, the Raspberry Pi 4 uses a USB-C port which is much more powerful and much more modern when it comes to charging and powering the device. It does, however, mean that you will have to spend more money on a power supply, but it comes in more varieties. I recommend the Madge Cubic 65-watt power charger as it is best to provide enough power for both the Raspberry Pi 3 and the Raspberry Pi 4, and can provide enough power for any high-powered drives you decide to install along the way. There are some issues with connectivity, as the big USB port, that is the rectangular port, does not provide as much power, and so I'd recommend using the USB-C ports. These are the oval-shaped ports. Please note that for the Raspberry Pi 3B, you will need what's known as a micro USB to USB-C cable in order to connect the Raspberry Pi 3 to this power supply. Alternatively, you can purchase a starter kit which will have all the necessary tools you will need for getting started with the Raspberry Pi. These include the Raspberry Pi 3 or 4, depending on which version you purchase, a power supply that is officially supported by that Raspberry Pi, and finally a micro SD card for the operating system. Speaking of which, when it comes to storage options, there are two types that you have to focus on. There is the storage option for the operating system and the storage option for the data itself. For the operating system, you will need what's known as a micro SD card, and for the data, you will need what's known as either a SATA or M.2 drive. We will get into those later. First, the micro SD card, these are relatively cheap. You can purchase a 16GB model for relatively cheap from the python.com or through the official starter kit that comes with the Raspberry Pi 3 or 4. You can use any micro SD card that you find in your house so long as it is 8GB or more. Please note that if there is data on that micro SD card, when you're putting the operating system onto it will completely wipe everything from that micro SD card. So if you have any data on it that you want to keep, make sure to remove it from the micro SD card before getting started with the operating system. Next, we'll look at the drives for storing your data. There are two types, SATA and M.2. SATA is both a connector and also a standard. It is reliable, cheap, but also slow, and it comes in two flavors, 2.5 inch and 3.5 inch. 2.5 inch is more common in old laptops and desktops, so you can find that lying around your house with no issues. Alternatively, you can purchase the SATA drive in a 2.5 inch form factor from the python.com. Please note that this will require a SATA to USB cable so that you can connect this drive directly to the USB ports on your Raspberry Pi. The next type of drive is M.2. This comes in two flavors, the SATA and NVMe standards. These refer to how fast the data can be transferred. SATA, like the connector, is older but much cheaper and easier to find. NVMe is much more expensive but much faster. Please note that the python.com only sells the SATA version of the M.2 drive. Regardless of which version you pick, you will need an enclosure to connect it to the USB port on your Raspberry Pi. These enclosures are suitable for all sizes of M.2 drive, and the sizes are based off of the height of the drive in millimeters and the length of the drive in millimeters. For example, 2280 refers to 22mm in height and 80mm in length. For this tutorial, I'll be using a 2280 drive. However, the enclosures I've picked will work with any sized M.2 drive. There are two enclosures that I would recommend. One from Ugreen, which is more expensive but works with more expensive, thus faster drives. It provides you with a USB-C to USB-A cable for you to connect to your Raspberry Pi. The SSK enclosure is cheaper but does not provide support for faster drives. It also provides you with a USB-C to USB-A cable just like the Ugreen enclosure. Now that you have everything we need, the next step is to install Raspberry Pi OS. See you there. In the last video we looked at what was needed for our Nextcloud server. Now we will look at installing the operating system known as Raspberry Pi OS so that we can download Nextcloud. Links will be in the description. First, our microSD card. You can get your microSD card either separately from the python.com or through the starter kit. When I insert my microSD card, it will have Raspberry Pi OS already, so as you can see there are errors, just ignore those. To install the operating system, we need to format the microSD card and download the operating system file from the Raspberry Pi website. Warning, this will completely remove all data on the microSD card. Make sure that if you have any valuable information that you want to keep, move it off of the microSD card now before you proceed. The next step is to get the operating system file. So, first we need to visit raspberrypi.com. You can do this in your browser. Then scroll down to See All Download Options. Then click on See All Download Options. From there, you'll see a list of different operating system versions. Make sure you click on the one that says Raspberry Pi OS with desktop, as it is relatively small and easy to use for most people. To download this, you will need to right-click on the download button and click Copy Link Address. Then open a program known as Berliner Etcher. This will essentially copy the image file to the microSD card. Now that we have it open, you will see a couple of options: flash from file and flash from URL. In my case, I will just flash from URL, but if you want to flash from file, this is what you would use if you downloaded the operating system image file. So instead of right-clicking the button, you just clicked on the button with a left click, and then you can search for the file on your computer and pick flash from URL and then Control V or Command V. Control V is for Windows and Command V is for Mac. Press Select Target to choose a microSD card. Find the microSD card based on storage size or name. In my case, it is a relatively large microSD card, as it says 256 gigabytes, but that's okay for me, it'll be fine. In your case, it will be based off of the name. Likely it would have SD card in the name, or based on the size, if it's 8 gigabytes, 16 gigabytes, 32 gigabytes, or whatever. Click the box to the left of your microSD card and then click Select. Then click Flash. Ignore the warning in my case, as this is for very large SD cards. The software thinks that you are wiping off a storage drive, i.e. where you have your operating system. Don't worry, in my case it is fine, as I know that this is the microSD card. So ignore the warning, click Yes, I'm sure, then the file will be then downloaded from the Raspberry Pi website and then copied over to the microSD card. This can take a few minutes depending on your internet speed and how fast your computer is. So I'll get back to it when this is finished. Okay, the flash is now completed and the image, or the operating system image file, is on the microSD card. If you don't see the microSD card in your File Explorer, to access the File Explorer, press your Windows button and then type this PC and then press Enter. And if you do not see your microSD card there, you should have the name microSD card or SD card. Then just eject the microSD card and then reinsert it. Once you have done that, you will see a bunch of errors show up. This is mainly due to how Windows works with image files, but that's fine. If you do not have a monitor, a keyboard, or mouse handy, you can use headless mode to set up your Raspberry Pi. This is where you remotely connect to the Raspberry Pi from a different computer, say your main computer, and then you can run the setup process without having to actually plug in anything into the Raspberry Pi itself. To access the Raspberry Pi remotely, we can use a software called VNC. This is pre-installed on the Raspberry Pi and is best for this specific use case. Now, to set up headless mode, we will need two files, an SSH file and a Wi-Fi configuration file. The SSH file will allow us to remotely access the Raspberry Pi's command prompt or terminal. This will allow you to edit anything you want on the Raspberry Pi without having to look at the desktop that you see on Windows or on macOS. The next file you need is the Wi-Fi configuration file, which has the username and password for your Wi-Fi network. This will mean that once your Raspberry Pi turns on, it will automatically connect to that Wi-Fi network once it sees it in the list. So, to get the SSH file in Windows, we will need to go to our desktop, then right-click, then click New and Text Document. Then, when naming the file, remove the .txt part and just type SSH lowercase. Then click Yes, and you have created the SSH file. This will enable a secure shell or SSH on your Raspberry Pi as soon as it turns on. Now, you should right-click the SSH file and click Cut. Then, go to the boot folder in your File Explorer, right-click, and then click Paste. Next, the Wi-Fi configuration file, also known as WPA_supplicant_CONF. This is the Wi-Fi configuration file, and the steps are as the same as the SSH file. Go to your desktop, right-click, and then click New Text Document. Name the file WPA-supplicant.txt. To get the underscore, just press right shift and then hyphen. This is next to the plus sign on your keyboard. Then Open this file in Notepad and then copy the following code. Make sure to change the username and password to match your Wi-Fi network. As I already have my own file, I'll use that instead. Then set your country. In my case, I will put GB. Next, save the file, close the program, then right-click the file, or you can press F2 on your keyboard to change the name of the file, specifically .txt to .conf. Then press enter. Page file, we right-click on the file, then click cut, go to the boot folder, right-click, and then click paste. Now we have the operating system on our microSD card and it is ready to place into the Raspberry Pi. Now we can eject the microSD card from our computer and then insert it into the slot into the Raspberry Pi. Then we plug in and power on the Raspberry Pi. With the Raspberry Pi 3, you can run it off a USB port on your laptop, although I'd recommend you use a dedicated power supply, likely one that comes with a starter kit. In my case, I'll plug it onto the USB port on my laptop. You will have to wait a few minutes before the Raspberry Pi fully boots up. In the meantime, in Windows, there is a program called Putty, spelled P-U-T-T-Y, link in the description. If you're using macOS or Linux, or if you do not like using Putty, we can use what's known as OpenSSH. This is a program that is free to use, just like Putty, but is compatible with all three operating systems. This can be accessed through your command prompt if you're on Windows, or terminal if you're on macOS or Linux. On Windows, press the Windows button and type Windows Features. Then, in the selection, click Apps and Features. Once there, click Optional Features. In the search option, type OpenSSH and download the client. The client is used to access other computers, while the server is used to access the computer you are currently using. Click Install, and then, once completed, close the Settings app. Now, Windows, press the Windows button and type CMD, then press Enter. To find your Raspberry Pi, we will need to get a list of available IP addresses, similar to a house address, but for your computer. Use the following command to get this list: ARP-A, then press Enter. Your Raspberry Pi will have the following pattern under Internet address: 192.168.0.xx, where XX is your Raspberry Pi. Now, to access your Raspberry Pi's terminal, you need to type the following command: ssh space pi at 192.168.0. whatever your number is. If you see an error about host identification being changed, do not worry, it means that you have accessed SSH too many times. In order to get rid of this, type the following command: ssh keygen, spelled Keygen, one word, then hyphen, then uppercase R, then your IP address of the Raspberry Pi. Then press Enter. Then use the same command as before to access the Raspberry Pi: ssh pi at your Raspberry Pi's IP address. Enter yes, and then enter the following password, raspberry, and press Enter. Please note that this is a very easy password to guess, and so must be changed as soon as possible. To do this, simply type the following command: PASSWD, and then type in your new password twice. Once you have done that, make sure that you keep a note of it, or else you will not be able to access some of the features in this tutorial. For my tutorial, I'll just leave it as a default. Once your new password has been set, you will need to update and upgrade the OS for security and stability reasons. This can be done at once on a single line where each command will run one after the other. The following command is sudo apt-get, with a hyphen in between apt and get, update, then 2 ampersand signs. You can get this from Shift and pressing 7 if you're using a UK keyboard. Then sudo apt-get, then upgrade. Press Enter and then press Y when asked Y/N. Wait for the upgrades to complete. This will take a few minutes. If you see the following prompt where it asks you to press Q to quit, then as requested, press Q and then the updates will continue. Okay, now the updates are finished, we can get VNC installed to look at the desktop like on Windows or macOS. Go to your browser and search VNC Viewer. Note that your Pi has VNC Server so you can remotely access it. Download for your operating system, in my case it will be Windows. Once you have downloaded VNC Viewer, you can now enable VNC on your Raspberry Pi. To do this, we will have to go to our Raspberry Pi terminal. As before, if you have closed this window, just SSH into it again. Then, once you are at the terminal, type the following command: sudo rasp Raspi spelled R-A-S-P-I, hyphen config spelled C-O-N-F-I-G, then press enter. This will give you access to the configuration options just like the Windows settings or macOS settings. Press the down arrow until you get to interface options, then press the down arrow until you see VNC being highlighted, then press enter, then left arrow, and then press yes to enable VNC. Now, there will be an issue once we try to access VNC and remotely access our Raspberry Pi for the first time. To remotely access our Raspberry Pi's desktop, go to VNC Viewer. This can be done on Windows by pressing the Windows button and then typing in VNC Viewer. In the address bar, enter your Pi's IP address. This is the 192.168 for your Raspberry Pi. Then enter your username and password. In my case, it is username Pi and then Raspberry for the password. Then click OK. As I'm using a Raspberry Pi 3 for this tutorial, you will see a low voltage warning. This is due to not using a dedicated power supply, but running off of a USB port. Now, as you can see, the image does look a little bit strange. My computer uses a 1080p or 1920 by 1080 resolution, but the Raspberry Pi's resolution does not match, which means that the image is a bit blurry and stretched out. This can be fixed relatively easily. First, click Next, 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 and skip until you get to the end of the setup process on the desktop. Once the setup is complete, we can now adjust the screen. So, click Scale Up Automatically from the options at the top. Now you can see the issue with the display. In order to fix this, we will have to change the resolution on our Raspberry Pi and then restart it, and then this issue should be resolved. To do this, we have to close the remote connection, so simply press the X on the top right hand corner. Then go back to your Raspberry Pi terminal. Then enter Raspi config as before and disable VNC. So same process as before to enable it, but instead of pressing yes, we will press no, and this will disable VNC. Then we go to display and options, and then the resolution, and then change the resolution to 1920 by 1080. This will be at the very bottom. This will depend on the resolution of your computer. So for me, it's 1920 by 1080. It may be less for you, but make sure that you check before doing this. Once you have changed the resolution, press escape on your keyboard, and then press the following command to reboot the computer: sudo space reboot space now. This will take a few minutes to turn off, and then a few minutes to turn back on again. And as you are turning off the computer, you will turn off your connection to Raspberry Pi via SSH. So you will have to reconnect to it once it shows up. As before, use the ARP command, and then you can check the list of available IP addresses. If after a couple of minutes you do not see your IP address, do not worry. Simply SSH into it as you would before, as sometimes the IP address does not show up. This is fine. Now that you have remotely accessed the terminal/command prompt again, simply re-enable VNC as you did before, and then, once you've completed that, you can exit the terminal, open VNC Viewer on your main computer, find the IP address of the Pi you connected to, and now the resolution should be fine. You'll get the following warning if the password hasn't changed, so make sure that you change it when you're following this tutorial. Congratulations, you've now just installed Raspberry Pi OS. Next step, installing Nextcloud. See you then. In the last video, we looked at installing Raspberry Pi OS, setting up headless mode, and updating the operating system. In this video, we will look at downloading, installing, and running Nextcloud, as well as setting up your Nextcloud account. You can continue using the terminal like we did before, or you can use VNC Viewer and run everything through the terminal on the desktop. Either is fine. For now, I'll be using the terminal inside of VNC Viewer. To download Nextcloud, click on the terminal and enter the following command. This will download the Raspberry Pi version of Nextcloud and will download the necessary packages for Nextcloud to run. This can take at least 15 minutes depending on your internet connection, so we will get back to it once it is complete. Right, now that the download has completed, visit the website listed in the first section. This will be the IP address of your Raspberry Pi. This is how you manage the server, e.g. changing passwords, adding new users, setting storage limits, and more. You can either access the website via the browser on the Raspberry Pi, this is called Chromium, or you can use the browser on your main desktop. I will be using my main desktop and I'll be typing in the URL manually. Note, when you visit the website, you will see a not secure warning at the very beginning of the address bar. This means that hackers have access to the data that travels between your computer and your Nextcloud server. Don't worry, this can be fixed at a later point in the video. For now, just click Advanced and proceed to visit the website. If you see the following untrusted domain error, this is due to Nextcloud not recognizing the IP address of the device you're trying to access from. This can be fixed by modifying the configuration file within Nextcloud to recognize your IP address and grant you access. To do this, you will need to go to your terminal and enable admin privileges using the following command, that is sudo su. This will allow you to edit certain files and access certain files that a normal user would not be able to access. First, we need to type cd /, which will give us access to the top folder or root folder in the operating system where we can access everything. Then enter ls to see a list of all folders in the folder you are currently in. We need to find the var folder, var, and then enter it. To do this, we will type cd var, which changes the current directory to var. Then type ls to find the www folder, and then cd into www. From there, we can then use ls to find the Nextcloud folder, and then we can type cd Nextcloud to access this folder. We can now type ls again, and we shall see the config folder, which houses the necessary configuration file. Cd into this config folder, and then type ls again, and you shall now see config.php. This file contains the list of IP addresses that are allowed to access our Nextcloud server. Well, we will use a text editor known as nano. To open this file in the text editor, type the following, nano, then config.php. You should now see the file in question and a section that says trusted domains. Underneath this section is the list of all the IP addresses. Press the down arrow on your keyboard until you reach this array, and then press the right arrow until you're in the same line as one of the numbers listed in the array, be it 0, 22, whatever. Make sure that you are typing after a comma and between the first and last entries of the array. Press enter and then type the following, 1, then equals, then greater than sign, then apostrophe, then the IP address of the computer you're trying to access your Nextcloud server from. Then press left control and then X to save the file. Finally, go back to your browser and retype the same URL of your Nextcloud server. If this still doesn't work, try rebooting the Raspberry Pi and then typing in the URL again. Once you have accessed the page, you will see two passwords. One is for Nextcloud Pi at the top, and the bottom one is for Nextcloud. Nextcloud Pi allows you to configure your Nextcloud settings and gives you access to all current system information about your Pi, as well as storage size of the current data, operating system, the performance of the Pi, and other information. Nextcloud, however, will give you access to your files, and then put them in a text file. You can create a text file like we did for the Wi-Fi configuration file. Make sure you note which password goes with which account. You can copy each password by clicking the icon at the end of each password field, and then Ctrl-V, i.e. paste, each password into your text file. Once you are ready, click Activate and then enter the details for Nextcloud Pi. This is NCP for the username and the password for Nextcloud Pi, which you'll have stored in your text file. After logging in, click Run to begin the setup process. Follow the prompts for each step. For saving data in an external storage drive, this is where you select Yes, and then you plug in your external drive to a USB 3 port. This will be blue on your Raspberry Pi. Note that you will be formatting this drive completely. Make sure that you transfer anything important over to a different drive. Click Continue and then your drive will be mounted to a folder. This means that a folder will be created to access the contents of your drive, same as you would see on macOS or Windows. For the drive to be used for cloud storage, the file system will either be converted to ext4 or BTRFS. This is how data is read by an operating system, and ext4/BTRFS are used by Raspberry Pi OS. Wait for the drive to be made ready for cloud storage. If you see the following mounting error, it is because the drive needs to be unmounted before you can format it, i.e. the folder used to access the drive must be deleted first. To find the mount directory, enter the following command, sudo lsblk into your Raspberry Pi's terminal. You will see your drive based on the storage size and its mount directory. In my case, my drive is 128 GB, and we can see a drive listed with 119 GB, which is close enough. The difference is due to how hard drive manufacturers and operating systems measure their storage sizes, so do not worry about the difference. We need to unmount the drive using the following command, sudo umount, then mount directory. In my case, sudo umount /media/mycloud drive. Go back to your browser and click anywhere to get rid of the error message. Try format USB again, and it should work this time. Then click Move Data to USB, which moves the folder where data is stored to your chosen drive. When you press Move Data to USB, if you see the following error, it is because the drive needs to be mounted again. To do this, we need to find the location given by the OS for the storage drive with sudo lsbrk. Find your drive, in my case, it's under /dev/sda1. Then go to the media folder where external drives are found and create the new directory there. cd/media in your terminal. Check if there are files or folders already there with ls. Create a new folder called USB drive with the following command: mkdir USB drive, where mkdir is short for make directory. Go back to your browser and click Move Data to USB, and we can continue. To check the data folder is in the correct place, enter ls and cd into USB drive, and then enter ls again. You will now see nc data, which is the data folder in question. The next step is external access. This lets you access your files from outside your home via the internet, like with Google Drive. However, you will need a Wi-Fi connection when uploading files. Note that this can be a security issue, as anyone can access your data if it is not secured properly. If you don't feel comfortable with this, you may press no. In my case, I will press yes. Following on from external access, port forwarding is the next section. This is where your router will redirect any external access from another device to your Nextcloud server, like a direct path to your data. You will need this for both security and for ease of access to your data, and this will need to be done manually. As the setup for port forwarding is different on each router, I will not go over this part. You'll need to check with your router settings and configuration for this. Note that ports 80 and 443 will need to be enabled to access your data. The final section is DDNS, which is a nickname for your website to access your data, similar to youtube.com, which redirects to the server that YouTube is hosted on. The listed options work fine, but there is an alternative that I like to use, which is free. So for now, press skip. Congratulations, the setup is now complete. Once you've completed the setup, you will see two pages, one for Nextcloud and the other is for Nextcloud Pi. Click the Nextcloud page to make sure everything is working. Right-click this button and click Open in New Tab. Wait for this page to load. If you see the untrusted domain error, that is fine, we can fix this later. For now, go back to the previous page and click on the Nextcloud Pi web panel. The Nextcloud Pi page will give you access to many features of your Nextcloud configuration. As you can see near the bottom, ports 80 and 443 are closed. To enable external access, these will need to be opened. To fix the untrusted domain error, you will need to find the trusted domain section of the Nextcloud Pi page. You can do this by clicking the magnifying glass and typing trusted domain, or pressing Ctrl and F on your keyboard and typing in trusted domain. From there, enter the IP address of the Raspberry Pi and click Apply. Then, revisit the website again and you will now have access to your Nextcloud page. Once you are on the login page for Nextcloud, simply enter the details from the bottom part of your text file. This is NCP for username, and for password, enter the password from your text file. You can do this by right-clicking, then pressing copy, then visiting the browser and right-clicking, and then pressing paste for both the username and password. You'll be presented with a short intro slide after a few seconds. Just click X in the top right-hand corner to get rid of them. The page and icons are similar to Google Drive, like files and photos. Nextcloud can be used in companies to collaborate on projects, but can be used for file storage as well. As this password will be difficult to remember, we can change this by clicking the account icon in the top right hand corner with picture N. Click Settings, then Security, and enter your current password from the text document and your new password. Note the new password is to be at least 8 characters long with letters and numbers for better security. Copy and paste the new password and then click Change Password. To make sure the password has been saved, log out by clicking the N icon and clicking Log Out. Then enter your username NCP and your new password. Then click Login. You should now be good to go. For external access, we will need a domain name or URL name that we type every time we want to externally access our data. Go back to your Nextcloud Pi panel and then find networking. There are two things we need: duck DNS and let's encrypt. DNS gives us the new domain that we use to access our data instead of typing the URL. For this, we need to create an account and then copy the necessary info over this page. Let's encrypt will then give us an HTTPS certificate to get rid of the not secure warning at the top of the web page, or convert to nonsense all data that is sent from our phone/computer. You will see this at truenas.com where it says connection is secure. Go to duckdns.org, type manually or copy and paste, and then create an account using the available options. I will sign in using GitHub. Subdomain section, choose a website that is unique to you and is easy to remember. Click Add Domain and make sure the IP address listed belongs to you. Go to Google and search "What is my IP" to check this. Once verified, go to the Nextcloud Pi panel and go to Duck DNS. Check the active box, copy your domain that you picked from the website and the token near top of page, and then click Apply. If you see the invalid parameters error, double check to make sure the details are correct. You may need to log out and log back in into duckdns.org and then copy the details. As before, add the new domain to the list of trusted domains. If the new domain does not work, then you may have not enabled port forwarding. Enable this now by following instructions for your specific router. Now you should be able to access your Nextcloud server from your new domain. Log in to your Nextcloud account and then you have successfully redirected your Nextcloud server. Now, to remove the "your connection is not secure" message, we will need to use Let's Encrypt. You can do this through the Nextcloud Pi configuration page under Let's Encrypt or through the terminal. I will do this through the terminal. Enter the following commands on VNC Viewer in the terminal and press Ctrl-Shift-V at the same time to paste and run the command. This will install a program that gives a certificate and encrypts traffic between our computer and the Nextcloud server. Next, we will need to enable this program with the following command. Enter your email address and then press Enter. Press Y to agree to terms of service, and then, if you'd like to sign up to the newsletter, press Y again. In my case, I will press No. Enter the domain that you would like to redirect. This will be the one you chose. Next, select the option that says nextcloud.conf by typing the associated number and then press Enter. We want the site to redirect us, so we will choose Redirect and press Enter. Once the certificate has been given, we need to verify this. Go to your browser and type in your chosen domain. You will now see a green padlock that says "Connection insecure" when you hover over it. Congratulations! You now have a fully functional cloud storage server that can cost about £100 based on our chosen parts. You can access it from anywhere in the world with an internet connection. You can add new users, add more storage, install additional security features, and more. When you go to Files, you will see the default files such as photos, videos, and documents. In the Photos folder, you will see a photo of the team behind Nextcloud at their office in Germany. Go to Users from the N icon and you can add or delete users. You can allot space to new users and change passwords of certain users. This concludes our Nextcloud tutorial. If you have any questions or video suggestions, please let me know. Apart from that, thank you for watching and I hope you have a fabulous day. Bye bye.